A couple of new things have happened. One is pretty obvious. Winter is finally here. It's pretty cold. And the second one, the new Suzuki Jimny is finally here, or we finally get to drive it. For a while now, we've been asking Suzuki, when is the new Jimny coming out? Can we drive it? We'd like to drive it, please. And they said, shut up. It's not out yet. We'll let you know. And also, don't tell anyone that we're bribing you to only tell good things about Suzuki cars. Well, my wish has finally come true, and now I'm sitting behind the wheel of this new tiny car which hides a rather impressive off-roader underneath. Now this, of course, is still a small, cute car, but it's a completely different shape than the previous generation, and I think it looks fantastic. It looks very cute. It looks like a puppy you go, good Jimny, good boy. I think it looks great. And let me point you to these alloy wheels as well. Now, of course, for off-roading, you wouldn't really get alloys, but these are pretty small, and the tires have a lot of, well, rubber in between. So that's pretty cool. And also, a lot of the times I complain about especially SUVs having lots of this black plastic to make them look like they're capable. But not in this case. It does have a bit of it, but I think it looks great as a whole. It's just a very cute car, again. You might have noticed the new model now has LEDs. I can tell you that these have made a huge difference driving around at night compared to the old halogens. And I can't help myself but smile when I see the Jimny. This new look really suits it. It has 3 doors and an interesting trunk. So some teams are pretty big. They're large production teams. They have several vans full of equipment. They've got a lot of people, cameramans, audio mans, and so on and so forth. Well, for us, it's just the 2 of us. A crazy guy behind the camera and a crazy guy in front of the camera. So I have to do this. I have to put things back in the car. Now this is just one of the cases we have several, not as many as big production teams, but let's put them in the Jimny. So the door is open like this, which is pretty cool. But that's not going to quite work, is it? So the only way to really put something in the Jimny is to collapse the back seats. Now, that's pretty easy. You just pull these 2 things and they collapse. And also, both a plus and a minus is that they have this hard plastic on the back. So if you put something in there, you won't worry about it getting horribly scratched. The minus is when you're driving with not everything, well, just maybe one case, it's going to go back and forth all the time. I did try riding in the back as well, and if you're not a small child, I wouldn't recommend the experience. There's practically 0 space for your feet, and the seats are pretty firm. This is very different in the front though, where the seats are heated and reasonably comfy, while the dashboard continues the blocky design. I won't bore you with the numbers, but I can tell you the new Jimny has some very steep approach and departure angles, thanks to its height and the short overhang of the chassis in the front and back. I have to say I was really looking forward to driving the new Jimny because, well, The last one was simply just so much fun, because every time you drove somewhere, it was an event, and the car just had so much character. And when I first saw the pictures of this new one, I wasn't entirely sure. It looked very interesting, but I had to see it in person. And I'm happy to say, of course, as you've seen in the video, that, well, I really do think it looks fantastic. And not only that, I see that people look at it all the time. It's like I was driving a very luxurious car of some sort, like a supercar, a Ferrari or Lamborghini or something like that. Well, one, it's probably the color, but two, there's not many of these on the roads just yet, but three, it is a very striking, cool little car. I think they did a fabulous job with the designing of the exterior. But secondly, and probably more important, is that this Jimny is just as much fun as the previous one was. And almost everything applies that did apply to the previous one as well. It's an event going somewhere. You hear the whine of the transfer case, you hear the roar of the engine, because it's not overly well insulated. It's a little bit bouncy because of the short wheelbase. But it is such a likable, lovely car. Every time I take it somewhere, yeah, I'm just smiling. I hope I didn't insult that truck driver there. And I do have to say, I'm not really sure what they did with the gearbox, but shifting gears in this 5-speed manual transmission car, Jimny, is so much fun. The shifter looks very sort of old school, maybe even a little horrible, but you know, it reminds me of the really old off-road cars. But it's actually very mechanical and quite precise to the feel. So now, would you like to hear how this car sounds on the freeway or on the motorway? Let's find out. So this is now 4,000 RPM, 110 almost. Top gear, 5th gear. This is now 120 indicated kilometers per hour. And 133. That wasn't full throttle, but this car isn't really a racer. So this is now the speed limit on the majority of European roads, doing about 4,100-ish RPMs. And as you might have noticed, I had to raise my voice a bit because it's quite loud in here. So this is fun, a little bit surprising. Well, not really surprising because the previous Jimny was the same, but this is definitely not a car to buy to go long distances with, because you're going to find out what tinnitus is if you haven't yet. So what about the bad things, the minuses? Well, one, as you've seen and heard, is probably the fact that the gearing is very short, and I wasn't even in low gear, forget about that, and the car is very loud when you're on a motorway. Like I said, this is really not a GT car, like a cruiser or something. So yeah, that's very loud, especially if you put it into 4 low, it's gonna whine even more, but you know, that's not really important because you're going very slow. The second thing is the position in front of the steering wheel. I'm not really sure if I'm missing something, but I haven't found any way to lower the seat, or raise it up for that matter. But because I cannot lower it down, I tried to raise up the steering wheel because it's pretty close to my legs over here. And that's not possible either. You can lower it, but you cannot raise it. So it's actually so bad that the steering wheel is obscuring the very top of the instrument. It's not bad, but it's a little bit weird. It's almost like this was designed for Japanese. The third thing is quite annoying, is the fan. You cannot hear it right now, but it's got this very annoying, not a whooshing sound or anything like that. I'd be fine with that, but it's got an electronic sort of alternating beep, 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 beep sound for some reason, and it's on the very lowest possible setting. And this sound only goes away if you shut it off. That is actually quite nice. I've been listening to that for a while now. That's very annoying. I'm not really sure what's up with that. And if you increase the speeds, yeah, it just increases in intensity as well. The sound, I mean. Then the next thing is, well, the crash rating, which is a little bit concerning. The car only got 3 stars in the crash rating. And that's not because it would lack assist systems. It's got radar cruise control, it's got anti-collision things, cameras, this, that. So yeah, it's just the crumple zone and all of that stuff. So yeah. But I am willing to overlook all of these minuses, apart from maybe the safety rating, because the car has just so much character. I knew I was going to like this one, most likely, but I didn't know that I would fall in love so much 5 minutes after driving it from the dealership. I kid you not. It was 5 minutes. It was empty, almost on fuel, so I had to go and fill it up, and I was already in love, just with those few minutes to the gas station. This car exudes character. It's such a cute, little, fun run around, and of course it's also a very, very serious off-roader, because it's got a proper transfer case box, because it's got a low gear, it's got a reduction gearbox, and you know, it's light, it's narrow, it's got narrow wheels, and it's very plucky. That's what it is. And in fact, because I know you won't believe me, and the footage will show of me actually off-roading, which was, some of the stuff was fairly scary because it was very, very steep, slippery, and there was a cliff on the other side, and this car did it with no problems at all, because it also does have hill descent control amongst other things, so it's fantastic. But because I know you won't believe me, I hope you will believe someone we spoke to, and he actually drove us in this car so he could try it out a little bit, who's basically a forest ranger of a big area, and he's been driving a Jimny 2 generations back for 16 years now. Oh, that's actually the car warning me that I was going to crash into the car in front, even though I was braking. But anyway, yeah, he had been driving that for 16 years and said that he did about 200,000 kilometers, most of them off-roading. Can you imagine that? And there was only one thing that went wrong, I think something with the suspension at the front, and that was his fault, he said, because they drove it a little bit too hard over some rocks and such and actually broke something. But otherwise, he said that the car is fantastic and that it does much better off-road than a big pickup truck, which he also tried, just because it's so light and nimble. But anyway, that's as far as the off-road capabilities go. And you know, otherwise, like I said, this is such a lovable little car. Oh yeah, one more minus I completely forgot to say. The steering, not just the steering wheel position, but the steering. It's very sort of nondescript. So don't expect to take this car on some serpentine roads and have a lot of fun with it. It's like, okay, I turned left, the car has leaned to the right, but isn't turning yet. Let me turn more. Oh, now it's turning, but it's sort of, I'm not sure how much it's turning. So, yeah. But I don't care about any of those things. I love this car. I love it. Oh yeah, one more thing I forgot to mention, and that is the fuel consumption. Now, of course, this Jimny has a 1.5 liter naturally aspirated engine, and it's not really very powerful, and there's going to be a few factors that will cause its fuel consumption to be fairly high. And one is the very short gearing, 2 is that I drove it quite a bit on motorways, and 3 that I also rode quite a bit on semi off-roading, let's call it that. So of course on the motorways it's going to drink a lot more because it's got short gearing, and on off-roading it's very low speeds at usually high-ish RPM, so that's going to have a much higher fuel consumption. So bear that in mind. Anyway, the average fuel consumption in all of the almost 300 kilometers that I've done so far in this car, and that's motorways and off-roading and city driving, is 7.9 liters per 100 kilometers, which is quite a lot. But you know, the Ranger guy actually told me that on his old Jimny, which has the 1.3, I believe, it's around 9.5 liters per 100 kilometers, but that's mostly off-roading. So there you go. In the city, it's actually lower fuel consumption because you're going slower and the short gearing doesn't hurt that much. But on the motorway, if you look at the instant consumption, it's almost around 10 liters per 100 kilometers, going 135-ish kilometers per hour.
The base Jimny starts at 18,600 euros. The fully loaded one with an automatic transmission and two-tone colors will come up to just over 22,000 euros.